If someone is murdered in this lifetime, is it because their soul pre-planned that? After doing over 1,000 past life regressions and higher self hypnosis sessions, I can tell you that the answer to this question is yes and no. Now keep in mind that if you try to answer this question from a human perspective, the way a human would think about it with all of its judgments and preconceived ideas, you're not going to get the answer that your soul would give. So try to keep an open mind when you listen to this. And again, it's based on what I've heard from so many people's higher selves. Okay, let's address the yes part of this question. Our soul, either on its own or with the help of our spirit team or our guides or our spirit council, makes a lot of plans for us before we incarnate here. And sometimes that can include something like a murder taking place. Either you're the one doing the murdering or someone else will end up murdering you. Many of us have had many lives, and we have encountered this very thing, usually from both sides of the equation. Because we travel through the veil of forgetfulness on our way from the spirit realm down to earth, so this can be like a brand new, exciting experience for us, we don't remember the plans that we made. And then our ego mind, our human mind, jumps in and says, there's no way I would plan something like a murder or a drug addiction or anything of the sort. But that is not at all what I see. Earth is a planet of duality. That means there are opposites. There's good and bad, right and wrong. And we learn on this planet through experiences. This is a playground where we get to actually act things out down here because in reality, this is all just a simulation. Even though it feels really real, it's not. None of this stuff actually harms us. We are infinite beings. We are a fractal of Creator God itself. And there is nothing that can actually harm that fractal of us, that godness of us. So in some instances, I see the soul does plan to experience being murdered for the very reason that the other soul wants to experience what they will learn from doing the act. And again, this might be hard for the human mind to grasp, but one of the main lessons I see that people learn from committing murder is how to value human life. After committing the act, they have the opportunity to feel regret and remorse and learn how to actually value human life, how to love human life. Now, not everyone does, but I'm saying that's the opportunity that they are receiving. Others who are doing the act want to know and have a life and just experience what it's like to just be an all-out brute, to maybe just go on some crazy rampage. And again, not from the human perspective, but from the soul perspective, they just want to experience what is that like to really dive deep into darkness. And again, because this is a playground, they can act that out. But in order to act that out, they have to have people on the other side who are the quote-unquote victims. Now, since we're not infinite beings on a human level on this planet, we all need an exit point or an exit strategy. And so some souls might say, well, I have to exit the earth plane somehow anyway, so I might as well exit that way. And they volunteer to be the victim. Or maybe in a previous life, the soul who's going to be the victim now was the one who did the act in a previous life, and they want to experience what is it like to be on the other side of it. So then they volunteer. Or a soul could actually volunteer to be a victim for the lessons that it will give the people who are left behind after their death. Maybe it's family that's left behind and they are enraged and have unforgiveness toward the person who committed the murder. This is an opportunity for them to learn forgiveness and unconditional love, which again goes contrary to what the human mind might think. But I know we've all heard stories where someone has murdered someone's son and the parents have come along and wrapped their arms around that person who killed their son and completely forgiven them and shown them God's grace. In other words, that was probably the lesson they were given and they jumped at the opportunity. So again, just keep in mind that this is a planet of duality. This is all being acted out for various reasons, and there's never truly a victim in these instances. There are always lessons that are learned by both parties. Now let's address the no side of this question. And when I say no, it's not a hard and fast no. There's usually an open window of a possibility of this happening. Say, for instance, in the pre-birth planning session, two souls agree that this might happen. If soul A doesn't get on the right track, he might go down a dark path and then turn around and murder soul B. But if soul A does turn his life around, he won't enter into that kind of life, and therefore soul B will not be murdered. So again, it's a possibility, and both souls are aware of this and have planned for it. The thing that determined whether or not it happens is the free will of soul A. Soul A was free to choose which path they wanted to take in life. And while I've come to learn that there is no one hard and fast rule to answer all of these questions, let me give you one more example where the answer might be no, it actually wasn't pre-planned. Let's say that soul A and soul B are living a pretty normal life and they're in a relationship. Soul A gets in a really bad car accident and ends up in the hospital needing emergency surgery. In the hospital having surgery, soul A's spirit leaves its body. And when that happens, a dark entity sees an opportunity to go in and inhabit the body of soul A. Now, it may be a partial possession, it may be a full-blown possession, but either way, they're now under the influence of a dark entity. Soul A completely changes as a result of having this dark entity and ends up murdering soul B, the one they were in the relationship with. Now let's leave out the fact that soul B may have been told by their spirit team and had little hints and clues that this person was no longer safe to be around, and they ignored those facts and stayed in a relationship with soul A. Therefore, on a soul level, that person did choose with their free will to stay in that life with soul A, knowing that it was not safe and the potential for being murdered was there. But was it pre-planned? Not necessarily. And I could get into a lot of other examples and nuances, but these are just a few. So like I said, what about death resulting from a murder? Is it always pre-planned? The answer is yes and no. It really just depends on the situation. And if you try to look at it from a human perspective without knowing all of the background stuff that goes on a soul level, you'll never be able to answer this question with truth. The truth about the situation can only be found beyond the physical, ego, human thinking mind. That's why I love doing higher self-hypnosis sessions so much, because it gives us the answers to all these types of questions. So if this is something that interests you and you have burning questions, feel free to check out my profile for more information on how to do higher self-hypnosis.